So you may have heard of the rule fat over lean, which means simply that you should not paint a high oil percentage relative to pigment to oil ratio should be higher on the upper layers, and the lower layers should be lean or have less oil in them. And this is certainly a rule that you should follow, but there's a rule that's far more important than that. And that is you should never have fast dry colors painted on top of slow dry colors, or in other words, slow on top of fast is what you should follow. And so if you look at this painting here that Sargent painted of this hand, you can see all the cracking that's all around the hand. Now you don't see it anywhere else, but you see it right there. Now that is, I'm not positive, but I'm almost certain that that's because he's painting some fast drying umbers, or colors that have a lot of umber in it. Could be raw umber or burnt umber, which are very fast dryers, on top of a slower drying paint, which is the flake white, which he used, or a lead white, which is what Sargent used to paint with. And now flake white is actually a much faster drying paint than titanium white or zinc white. So it's even more true today that you would never want to paint a burnt umber on top of a titanium white, no matter what the oil ratio is, because that burnt umber is going to dry way faster over the long term than the very slow drying titanium white. Now, if you're working wet and wet, none of this is anything you have to worry about, except that if you're going to stain your canvas, a lot of times you'll buy a canvas that's been pre-primed. And if you're working with like an oil-primed linen or an oil-primed canvas, you need to be sure that that oil prime is very lean, and also that it's got they probably put dryers in some of those colors, because they want that base layer to be fast drying, but also to be very lean. Now our canvas stain that we make is both of those things. It's very lean, and it's got a lot of burnt umber in it, which is a natural dryer. So those things are both very important, and that's why our canvas stain is made both very lean, which is why it dries and it looks so matte and flat. It's because the oil percentage is very low, but also it has a lot of burnt umber, which makes it dry fast. So it's safe to use under anything. But if you're going to choose a canvas to paint on, the very best thing is to use, like I believe, an acrylic primed linen. And even those are less expensive typically than the oil primed linen. But it's just one less variable, because acrylic is extremely fast drying, and it's no problem to paint oil on top of acrylic, but you would never do acrylic on top of oil. And anybody that is painting houses knows that. So I highly recommend acrylic primed canvas, and then painting it with our stain or any kind of fast drying but also lean foundation layer. Okay, now if you look at these two still lifes here, you can see all this cracking, and that was because early on when I first started teaching here in Austin, this is over 10 years ago, I ordered some lead primed canvas, very expensive. And they changed their formula, and I didn't know it, and they changed it and started using a titanium base, which didn't dry as fast as that flake white base. And so I had all this cracking, and you can imagine what a disaster that would be if I would have painted a portrait and delivered it. I have to repaint the entire painting. So it's something that's really important, and you don't want this to happen to you. There's one other rule, and I thought I'd just mention it in this video when we're talking about, there's a rule that people know, and that is that you're supposed to wait 6 months or at least 3 months before you varnish your painting. But I just should let you know that it's no problem to varnish your painting after you know that it's dry. It needs to be dry, 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 like not skin on top with wet paint underneath, but dry all the way through, and as soon as it's dry, you can varnish it. Now, if you varnish it right after it dries, you may need to re-varnish it in like a couple years, because the varnish will sink into the paint a little bit. But it's not something that's going to harm your painting. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.